Here we. So I'm here joined by former WWE United States champion and two-time TNA heavyweight champion of the world, and it is an honor to interview Mr. Ken Anderson for BodySlamNet. Thank you for joining us, sir. How are you today?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right, it's a pleasure. Thank you very much. So let's roll right into it. So starting at the beginning, tell us about life growing up in Wisconsin, and was wrestling something you were a fan of from an early age?
I wasn't. There was a brief period where I kind of watched Saturdays. And for some reason I fell into the whole wrestling's fake. Somebody told me that it was fake, and I to this day I can't. I just had somebody say that to me a few days ago in one of my live streams, and like everything's fake. Jurassic Park is fake. Friends was taped in front of a live studio audience. It's. But anyway, that was my deal, and then I kind of made fun of my friends who did like wrestling. And then one night I was at a party, and one of my friends invited me over, and he was like, "You've got to watch. There's this new guy that's really getting rolling." And so I agreed to do it, and I saw Steve Austin for the first time, and I was hooked. I was like, okay, he's really cool. I like his deal. So then I would tune in just to sort of see what he would do every week. And then pretty soon it was like the Nation of Domination was just getting started, and I got sucked into Undertaker and Kane and all that stuff. So uh, yeah, I didn't find wrestling until I was 21 years old, though. And then once I did, that's all I did. I just watched wrestling all the time, talk wrestling. And then I found out, hey, you can go to wrestling school. Found a wrestling school, and here we are. That's 25 years ago.
Amazing. So what was Ken Anderson like before wrestling? What were interests you? What was your upbringing like in Wisconsin?
Um, I guess pretty normal. I was kind of a class clown my whole life. I knew from an early age that I wanted to entertain people. I would be the one that would, when video cameras, I remember we used to have these giant video cameras, right? Like my friends and I would get together and make little movies. Um, and then once I got to high school, I was the one that was always standing up on a table telling jokes at a party and doing impersonations of some of my teachers. And um, yeah, so I knew that I always wanted to get into entertaining. I never played football or basketball. I ran track a little bit. I swam, and I didn't even get into theater. For whatever reason, I wanted to entertain people, but I didn't like theater. Just didn't give me a good feeling. A few plays, and then I think I was a sophomore in high school, and one of the teachers came, and she's like, I hear you're a decent actor. Would you do this thing called forensics?" And forensics was like, there were different categories where you could compete with other people. There was speech, where you give a speech. There was debate. There was solo acting, monologue, play acting, where you got to work with, I believe, 4 other people. You put together a little 15-minute play, and you weren't allowed to use any props or anything, and then you would compete. So we competed my sophomore, junior, and senior year. We went to state and got gold medals all 3 years. But that was pretty much it. I didn't really know what I wanted to do when I got out of high school. Everybody always told me that I needed to, pick a profession, go to college. That wasn't for me. I didn't do that. I tried a little bit. And then I was just sort of floundering, like trying to figure out. I had a bunch of jobs, different jobs, and then I found wrestling, and I was like, I can do this. I'm gonna make a go at this. And then I was all in.
Amazing, incredible. So how did you go about then from that passion breaking into the business and getting involved in the crazy yet awesome world of wrestling, finding your feet?
It is crazy. When I always tell people that I was so fortunate to have found the right wrestling school, because there are wrestling schools out there. There were probably 4 at the time in the surrounding, 3-state area, maybe more than that. And had I called them first, we wouldn't be having this discussion, because there's a lot of bad schools out there that, you have a guy that had 5 matches and then he starts training people. And I could have very well called one of those places. For whatever reason, luck of the draw, I ended up calling a place in Chicago, because I lived near Green Bay, Wisconsin. Chicago is about a 3.5-hour drive. And I remember thinking that if I broke into the business, if I found a wrestling school, it was definitely not going to be in the area. It wasn't going to be in Two Rivers where I lived. So I assumed that I would have to go to like one of the big cities like Chicago, LA, or New York. So I started looking in Chicago because that was the closest. And I found this one near Chicago. And I remember thinking, this was way before I didn't even know anything about the business. I didn't know who Ric Flair was at the time. I remember thinking, if I do this, I work every other weekend. I'll drive down to Chicago. I'll sleep in my car if I have to. I'll train on the weekends there, and I'll come back. And as luck would have it, that guy got me in touch with a guy in Green Bay, which was only 30 minutes from my house, who was just starting a wrestling school, and I ended up being his first student.
Wow.
But yeah, and then I remember I had to go do a tryout, and I went up to Green Bay, went in this crappy 16-foot ring with floppy, wobbly, saggy, noodly ropes with rips and tears and duct tape and blood stains and stuff all over the canvas. It was a low rider, so it only sat like 2 feet off the ground, probably not even 1.5 feet. And it was hard too. And I remember I stepped foot in that ring for the first time, and I don't know, I just had this feeling come over me, these goosebumps, like this is it. This is what I want to do. And then I started training. We only trained one day a week. We trained every Sunday for 9 months before I had my first match. And to be honest, my trainer pushed me to have that first match. I wasn't ready. I didn't think I was ready. And I probably would have trained for another 6 months to a year before I felt really comfortable. But he pushed me into it, luckily. And it was terrible. My first match was awful, in hindsight. But I'm glad that he pushed me out the door.
Wow, incredible. That's awesome. So breaking in, is that when you debuted as Two Rivers Jack in 1999?
So that's a funny story. The guy that I actually ended up calling first in Chicago, like I said, he runs a wrestling school. And to keep everybody in check, and to keep everybody's egos in check, he likes to, if you're new, he kind of ribs you. Like, he'll give you a crappy gimmick, and he'll have you. I remember the first night I wrestled in front of like 400 crazy fans, because I sold tickets to all my friends and family, everybody that I knew. And then the next night I worked a show in like Whitewater, Wisconsin, with there had to be maybe 50 people in the audience. I wrestled a guy who was dressed up. He was like a fake Golga. I don't know if you remember Golga from the Oddities. He was a big, heavyset guy. Put a mask on him. He's Golga.
Carry that Eric Cartman toy around with him.
Yep. And so I wrestled a fake him, and I believe I got one drop kick in the match, and he no-sold it. He didn't take a bump on it or even stagger. And then he just basically squashed me. I got no music too, and they called me Two Rivers Jack. So I only did that one time, and then he allowed me to wrestle as Kamikaze Ken Anderson after that.
Nice one. Is that how did you come about then? I believe you did a match with S.A. Rios, wasn't it, on Jack as well? How did you then, from, like you say, you wrestle in front of 50 people, get the WWE, and you even believe TNA, you appeared on one of their secondary shows, Explosion. How did they get in touch with you to bring you across into the frame?
I got in touch with them.
Yeah.
I always tell people, like, they're not going to call you. You have to go. You have to call them. There's a million people standing in line right now, knocking on that door. So you have to do it, and you have to be the loudest voice. But I remember I was about 10 or 11 months in, and I got a hold of, there was a PWI, I believe, Pro Wrestling Illustrated Insider.
Yeah, that's good.
The magazine,
yeah.
the magazine put out an edition every year where they had all of the contact info for all of the major and minor wrestling companies in the world or in the US. So I remember the first, it would be like the first couple pages was WWE, and then the next one was WCW, and then ECW, and then all these little independents after that. So I just, and I was told by other people, don't do it yet. You're not ready. You're super green, and I was super green. If you watch my first match with S.A. Rios, it was rotten. Just my ring presence, awareness. But I always thought, like, even though people were telling me not to do it, I was like, well, if I send them a tape and they see me today, and then they give me some advice, and I go away, and then I come back and I've improved, they're going to see that, right? They have to see that. And that was just my mentality. I was like, I'll just keep, I'm sure I'm not going to get a job tomorrow, but I'm going to keep trying, and eventually I'll get there. And so, yeah, I sent the tape to Kevin Kelly, or I sent the tape to WWE, and it was just so happened that Kevin Kelly was in charge of hiring extras at the time. So he called me, said, hey, I liked your tape. Come down to Chicago and Milwaukee Monday and Tuesday. We're doing Raw. At the time, I believe Raw was on Monday, and then SmackDown was on Tuesday.
Yeah.
So I went to, I don't remember which one was first, but nervous. I mean, like crazy nervous, right? I'm in the catering, standing behind Steve Austin, and got one of these butterflies in my stomach. But at the same time, I have to be professional. I can't act like a fan. So, and luckily that day, Tony Gurria came up to me and said, hey, can you do all that Mexican high flying bullshit? And I said, yes. And he goes, all right, you're working S.A. Rios tonight, and just put me in a match. And then every time WWE would be in the area, anywhere, like I would drive to Detroit and Cleveland. Actually, no, I'm sorry. S.A. Rios wasn't in Milwaukee or Chicago. Milwaukee or Chicago, I was just there. Nobody got work. And some other people that were there at the time were Vic Capri, a young blonde-haired Bobby Roode, and Steve Boz was another guy. And none of us got used. But then I saw that they were going to be in Detroit and Cleveland maybe 6 months later. So I reached out to him again, and he was like, sure. So I went by myself. And that's what I did. I would just, every 6 months or so, I would call and send a tape and ask them if I could be an extra. And every time they were in Milwaukee or Chicago, I got booked.
Nice.
That happened. That was, 4.5, 5 years of doing that and going there and having these matches, or just sitting around in the back, but just trying to soak up as much knowledge as I could. And then I'd go home and I wouldn't hear a thing. The worst, some of the worst, I can take criticism all day, but sometimes the worst thing is not hearing anything at all. I'd come back from having a match and I would go, any pointers? No, that was good. And it's like, but in hindsight, they just have so much stuff going on. There are so many moving parts at a Raw taping or a SmackDown taping. They don't have time to worry about. Yeah, you did your job, kid. Okay, next.
Wow. So whilst you were there, like you say, so knowledge, were there any wrestlers, even though you were an enhanced talent, were there any wrestlers that took you under your wing, or maybe gave you their time to, like you say, pass on some knowledge to you because they maybe saw some potential in you at the time?
There was actually a lot.
Mm.
I remember specifically Val Venus giving me some pointers about selling, and I remember Stevie Richards helped out, Arn Anderson and Fit Finley. So when we would get there, you get your gear on, you go get your shorts and a t-shirt on, and you go stand by the ring. And Fit would come out there, Arn, Dean, and I remember specifically too a lot, Shelton and Charlie. Every day they would get in that ring with Arn and work on stuff and find new ways of utilizing tags and stuff like that. And so we would just sit there and soak up as much knowledge. And then every once in a while they'd say, like, hey, you and you get in the ring, have a 5-minute match. And you get in there and just nervous, just kind of working on the fly. Or I remember one time Arn said, hey kid, you doing anything today? I said, no. He's like, would you mind getting in the ring with Nathan Jones at the time was there, 6'10" Australian.
Yeah.
And they were trying to get him ready for Undertaker. So I remember Taker was standing there. And Arn's like, you mind getting in there and take a couple bumps for this kid? Sure. So I got in there and I remember he went, all right, mate, I'm gonna grab you by your ears and I'm gonna beel you out of the corner. So he grabbed me by my ears and I just grabbed on, and he was like, just jump a little bit. And I jumped, but I didn't have to jump much. He launched me from one corner. That's a 20-foot wrestling ring. He launched me from one corner to the other. My feet hit the turnbuckle on the other side. And then I think he did an elbow drop. Oh, I know he did an elbow drop. But it wasn't just a normal elbow drop. He like jumped as high as he possibly could, laid out, and just came down on my stomach. I remember Taker was sitting there and he just goes, Nathan, maybe up in here. Okay. A little higher. Like, it was one of those, you could see the Taker frustration at the time, I think, because we're trying to teach him, and this is hard. This is really hard to do. I don't care how athletic you are. Everybody that I train, you've been a wrestling fan your whole life, I imagine.
Yeah, since Christ, as long as I can remember, 2 years old, probably. Yeah.
Most of my students have been wrestling fans their entire lives. They've seen people run the ropes. It's like you don't even think about it, right? Somebody getting shot into the ropes and ducking, and it's one of the hardest things. I've never seen anybody just get in the ring and take off and hit those ropes. It always looks like a deer, a little Bambi taking its first steps on ice. Always. But yeah, it would just be stuff like that. I remember one time I was in the ring and I remember thinking, well, I got to show them my ability. And then somebody will notice me. And I remember just in one of those sessions where we were kind of standing outside the ring, I did the Hangman Page does that buckshot.
Yeah.
I think Punk does it too. That was how I used to get into the ring. On some matches. And so I did that. And I remember Billy Gunn just looked at me and he stared a hole through me. And that was the last time that I ever did something like that. And I realized then that I'm not here. I'm here to enhance their talent. In doing that correctly, as best as I possibly can, I'll get over. That's how you get over. You don't get over by being loud and obnoxious and showing off. There's guys that can do all that stuff way better than I can. So just you got to do your job and chill. And then I remember another time was in the ring and what's his name? Bill DeMott. He was pairing us up and I got in the ring and I just completely shit the bed for some reason. And he was like, that was fucking terrible. Get out of the ring. Get out of the ring. And he kicked me out and it was super embarrassing. But I just never let anything sort of get me down. I just kept humping it.
Wow. That's awesome. Yeah, the stories are awesome. And going back to, like you said, with us as fans watching it, you think, oh, they're just hitting the ropes. But I was listening to the Undertaker's show, and he said the thing he dreaded the most getting into shape was hitting the ropes. Was one of the things he dreaded, because he said it just tears. It's like, he said, there's nothing you can describe it as. It looks really nice and easy, but it's not. Like, it takes a toll on your body just running ropes. And
Yep.
so it's just the little things like that that you don't think as a fan, like what it does to you as a wrestler.
It's not normal. Whenever people start bumping,
Mm.
I always tell them, like, you're how old are you?
31.
31. So if you were in my class right now, I would say for 31 years you've tried not to do this.
Mm.
Like when you slip on the ice, you tried not to land on your back.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You always try to catch yourself. So now I'm trying to teach you. You have to abandon that mentality, and you want to actually hit the mat as hard as you can, and it'll hurt less when you do. So
yeah,
nuts.
no, it's like I say. I think that's why I see wrestlers as such high esteem, because I think what you put your bodies through and what you do for entertaining us fans is just, I don't think it's appreciated enough. Like you say, when you hear people say it's fake, it's like, well, okay, the results are predetermined, but you don't see many wrestlers that are doing backflips and skipping along at 60, 70 years or even 50 years of age from what they put their bodies through. So, yeah, it's incredible. So, obviously, going and being the enhancement talent in WWE and doing that 4 or 5 years, how did you come about then signing with the company in February 2005? And where did the idea of the Kennedy character come from? And the little nuances of the character as well.
So February 2005, huh? I trying to think. I just kept doing that, and I made connections along the way, and sort of built up many relationships. And it was like all the pieces fell into place at once. So when it happens, it feels like it's overnight. It just, they all click and everything's, you're away and off to the races. But it was Arn. I had a good reputation with Arn, because a lot of times that I would go and do these matches, he would be my agent, and I always did what he asked of me, and I always, did it well. And so Arn was there in my corner, and then Tommy Dreamer at some point came in and took over from, actually, Dr. Tom came in and took over from Kevin Kelly. So I built up a relationship with him, and then Tommy Dreamer came in and took over that position. So I had relationships with Tommy, and at the time, Daivari was also trying to. Daivari and I were like best buds, and we did a lot of traveling together. We wanted the same thing. It was the two of us. It was WWE or bust. That's what we were trying to figure out, that formula. Like, what are they looking for? And not everybody had that mentality. Some people just wanted to go out there and tell, the high flying flippy stuff. And we wanted to do that too, but we wanted to do it in a way that we were telling stories so that WWE would take notice of us. And that, I remember one time I was sitting ringside. I was in one of those jam sessions by the ring, and Paul Heyman, there was a talent meeting. So everybody was at this talent meeting. It was just us, just the extras. And for some reason, Paul Heyman and Jim Ross were the only two that didn't attend this meeting. And they happened to be sitting ringside right up front. And I got in the ring and I just did my stuff. And when I tagged out, because it was just like a little tag in, tag out thing. When I tagged out, Paul just said, "Come here for a second." And I walked over to him and he introduced himself and he said, "Who trained you?" And I told him that I had been trained by a guy in Green Bay. And then Brad Rangans, I don't know if you're familiar with Brad, but Brad trained Brock. Brad was an AWA wrestler back in the day. He was also an Olympic, or he was like an amateur wrestler. Worked his whole life, made it to the Olympics, and I believe it was 1980, President Carter boycotted the Olympics. So he didn't go, right? It's just a tragic story there. Um, but then I told him I went and got polished from Brad Rangan's, and when I said Brad, his eyes lit up because obviously Paul and Brock had a long history together, and I know Brad. Brad's a very good friend of mine, and then he said, I really like your work, and we kind of talked a little bit, and I believe he gave me his office number time. And he said, I want you to call me next Wednesday. And then also during the day, somebody came up and got me. And it was Johnny Ace came up to me and said, hey, Paul Heyman wants you to go and cut a promo. Can you do that? And so, yeah. So I go back and I'm getting ready to cut this promo. I'm nervous. And Paul came up to me and he was like, maybe you say something like this. And he gave me some examples. And he cut a perfect babyface promo just off the top of his head. And then he goes, or maybe you could do a heel promo like this. And he'd cut a heel promo. And so I'm like, this guy's nuts in a good way. Like I can't believe that he can do this. And so I had something in my head. I was gonna cut it. Time ran short. Like I said, everybody's running around backstage like chickens with their heads cut off. It didn't happen that day. And so he said at the end of the night, call me. Just make sure you call me. And so I called him for like the next 3 years and I never got through to him. But that's the way the business goes. You know, it wasn't a personal thing. It was just whenever I happened to call, you got listed priorities. And I just happened to be lower on that list of priorities at this time. But he remembered me. And eventually when they hired, I remember Arn Anderson saying, hey, they're going to be hiring here pretty soon. And I can't promise you anything, but I'm definitely going to put in a word for you. Wow. And Tommy said he was going to put in a word for me. And, he told me Paul likes you. So I don't know if all of those guys had a hand in it, but then I remember Dreamer called me up one day. Actually, Daivari called me and said, hey, did you get a call from WWE? They just hired 7 people. And I was like, no, I haven't heard anything. I'll wait. And I'm waiting by the phone and I'm answering bill collectors that I normally wouldn't answer because it's a number that I don't recognize. And that went on for like 5 days. And then I finally was like, okay, I'm gonna have to call Tommy. So I called Tommy and I said, Tommy, this is Ken Anderson from Green Bay. He was like, Ken Anderson from Green Bay. Hang on a second, which he never, ever, ever told me to hang on. It was like, if he had something else going on, it was, I can't talk right now. I'll talk to you later. And I heard some rustling, some papers. He was like, I've been trying to call you, but your number is disconnected. And I'm like, no, it's not. No, I didn't get my number disconnected. Oh. And then he said, is your number blah, 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 blah. I said, no. Oh, I've been calling the wrong number. Wow. He goes, the reason I called you is I wanted to tell you that I got you a job. He's so monotone when he says stuff. I don't know if you've ever interviewed him or
no, not yet. No.
In a room with him. It's so funny. He's so monotone. He'll tell you like the most exciting thing in the world. Hey, I just won $1 billion. And so yeah, he told me, hey, I got you hired. And he tells me today that he was almost, he said, another hour of trying to get a hold of you and you not calling me back, I probably would have went to my next person on my list and you would have gotten passed over. So yeah. So he told me, hey, you're hired, but we don't know where we're going to send you. They were just opening up Deep South Wrestling. This was before FCW and before NXT. So OVW was the place. But they were opening up this new one. He goes, I don't know if we're going to send you there. So just sit tight. And I had a friend several years earlier who had gotten a contract and they told him the same thing. They were like, sit tight. And he just sat around for 6 or 7 or 8 months. And then they just released him. So I was like, I have to do something. Daivari was hired by the company at that time already, and he said, ask to go to OVW. He's like, they're already established. You don't know if Deep South is going to be there in a year or not. Like, OVW will be there. Ask him to go to OVW. And then I think Daivari put in a word too, and so Tommy said, yeah, you can go to OVW. I just don't know when you're going to start. So I quit my job and I called an apartment complex down in Louisville, and I booked I paid my first month's rent and security deposit for a place. I had never seen the place. And I loaded up a U-Haul and I drove down. And I remember calling after I unpacked everything. I called Tommy and I said, Tommy, could I just swing by OVW and introduce myself? And he was like, are you there looking for a place? And I said, no, I'm here. I moved here. He's like, you're there already? Well, this was on a Wednesday. He goes, go there, introduce yourself, and then you can start on Thursday. So, had I not just taken the bull by the horns and done all that, I don't know. We might not be having this conversation. So
it's incredible, and that's a lesson. Yeah, like I said, take the bull by the horns, and like equivalent waiting for the call. They're not going to come to you. You've got to show, and that's probably what did it for them. Would you drive it? Yeah, I've driven, moved all the way down to Louisville. I'm ready to go. And they think, okay, all right, guy wants it.
Yeah,
that's incredible. So how did you find your time in OVW, and how long were you there for?
I think I was there for six or 8 months before I got the call up. And for the first 5 of that, I didn't know what I was doing. I mean, in the sense that I was just another hand, like everybody there had a body. Everybody there was a solid worker. You had to stand out from the pack somehow. And I didn't really have anything that, I cut good promos and stuff, but I didn't find that thing. But about every 2 months, Paul Heyman would come down and do promo class with us. And what that was we would select anybody that we wanted and cut a promo on them. And we would go into a little room with Paul and a camera. You cut your promo to the camera, and then Paul would give you notes. Then you'd go home, work on it that night. The next day you'd come back, cut it again, and Paul would again give you feedback and stuff. So I would do that. And I remember the first time I went in there, and I don't remember who I picked, but I picked somebody that was like a lower card guy. And he was like, why are you shooting yourself in the foot? Why aren't you going after Undertaker? Why aren't you going after John Cena? Why aren't you going after, if that's what you want to be when you're there, then go after that person. And I went home and I changed it. I believe I changed it to Taker. And I came back and I hit all the notes, and I remember he just said, loved it. Okay, thank you. And then that was it. And any feedback at all? Nope, loved it. So that happened another time. And I remember thinking, like, this guy doesn't like me. And then fast forward to, I think, my 7th, like I said, I'm not sure if it was 6 or 8 months, but like, a month before I actually got the call up, I get Boogeyman does his entrance for the first time. And as he's coming to the ring, a young, unassuming Santino Marella is sitting by the ring. Do you know this story?
Yeah.
So that thing changed my life right there. Like, seriously. So Santino wasn't selling for the Boogeyman, apparently, because he didn't know any better. He was just enjoying the show. He was just sitting there as a fan, kind of. He fanned out just for a moment, and Jim Cornette saw him on camera laughing at the Boogeyman, or smiling at it. And so Jim went backstage and just paintbrushed him. I remember standing I was like 5 feet away from it, and it was bam, bam. You want to sell for me? Psh, you don't want to sell? You don't want to sell for that giant man that just came out from underneath the ring? Psh.
Wow.
And the next day he got fired, and we weren't sure who was coming in. And then suddenly, oh, Paul Heyman's coming in. He's taking over. And he came in, pulled me aside. I need to talk to you. I went in the room with him. He said, "You're the next guy out of here." And I was like, he said, "Yep." He goes, "I've been a fan since I met you that day, back when I asked you who trained you." He goes, "I've been watching your promos. I love it. I've been watching what you do. You're the next guy out of here. I'm going to do so much stuff with you on TV that they're going to have to notice you. They will notice you. And you'll be out of here soon."
Wow.
And that night, OVW was about an hour, I think it was 55-minute program.
Mhm.
And of that 55 minutes, I think I had 35 just on that first show. I was doing backstage interviews and a lengthy match and a post-match interview. And then I think it was my second or third week with Paul at the helm. And he said, "Tonight, go out there, cut the ring announcer off, grab the mic out of his hands, dress him down, cuss him out, and then you do your own introduction and do it big and loud." And so I used to announce basketball games when I was in high school, and I used to do the last name twice thing. And it wasn't even something that I planned to do. It was just in that moment, I was in the ring and I was like, "I'm going to hit my last name twice." And I hit it. And I got to the back. And like I said, I had that was a different night, but I had a pretty lengthy match that night too with Brent Albright. It was like 20, 25 minutes. And I got to the back and everybody was like putting me over and clapping me on the back about the last name twice thing. Nothing about the match, nothing about anything else. They were like, do that again. And especially at that level, you got to listen to the boys. You got to listen to the people in the back, because we're cynical. We've seen everything. Mm-hmm. And you just kind of know when something works or is going to work. You can feel it. Keep doing that. And then I just started doing that. And I think like 2 weeks later, I got the call from Tommy. He said, "Hey, they want to bring you up to Columbus, Ohio for SmackDown. And they want to see your stuff. They want to see your whole gimmick." So then I got called. I went up, and that day I was supposed to wrestle. I was wrestling Funaki. Funaki was going to hit me with the super kick at the end, 1, 2, 3, but I was going to get to do my intro with the microphone and everything. And it wasn't like a squash or anything like that. It was a competitive match, but he was going to pick up the win. And Paul got word to somebody there that day, said, "Have him cut a promo." So I went back with Steve Lombardi, who's the Brooklyn Brawler, who was in charge of all their pre-tapes and stuff. And I went in with him, cut a promo to the camera, and I got done. And I remember he said, "That was awesome." He goes, I'm telling Vince, I'm seriously, I'm gonna go talk to him right now. I'm gonna go tell him, like, I think you're ready. And I think he did, because I was in gorilla position doing push-ups, getting ready to go out. It was just going to be a dark match, not televised. And Vince McMahon walked around the corner, and then Dave Lagana walked up like a minute later, and he said, "Hey, there's been a change." And I immediately thought, they cut my match. It's all right. Next time. And he goes, this is actually going to be a televised match. We're going to be on Velocity now. And we need to come up with a finisher for you, because you're going over. And welcome aboard. And I was like, "Really?" He's like, yeah, you start tonight." Yeah. Awesome. Cool. What can you do? And I remember I had done the, hang on one second.
No, it's okay.
My cat is kicking around a bottle cap. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine. I know
Did you hear that? Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Oh my God. How long has it been going on?
Oh, just a couple seconds, I'd say.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Sometimes something when I'm in, like, I'll be doing this at the school, and my wife is Stop it. Stop it.
Yeah, I'm bad for that. So if you hear it, let me know. Because yeah, just habitually click the pen here next to me.
Yeah. But yeah, then Finley was our agent at the time. And I had done the Finley roll off the second rope. One other time I did it with Austin Aries at IWA Mid-South, which was Ian Rotten's promotion. At one time, and it worked well, but I never went back to it for some reason. It was kind of hard to get into and make believe, how do you get somebody up there like that?
Yeah.
So I said, what about this? And Funaki's eyes got huge right away. That's a big, scary bump to take. And I was like, I promise you, like, I'll squeeze you, I'll hold on to you, I'll set you down as gently as I can. It's not bad. Oh, and then the thing is, I think Funaki went with it because he had seen me there so many times before and knew that I was like somewhat trustworthy, right? Like they wouldn't keep having me back if I was dangerous. So he agreed to do it. And I went out there, and I remember at the time having that match. And every other time I went out in front of that audience, I was so nervous that I could almost puke. Like I'd start seeing stars and tunnel vision and stuff, right? For whatever reason, that night I felt like I fucking belong here. Like this is it. And I went out there and I did my stuff to the best of my ability. And I came back to the curtain, and Vince gave me you get that from the boss. That's good. Usually he won't say anything at all. Thank you. It's just something like that, or nothing at all. Just he's on to, but yeah. And then from that point on, I was on all the house shows, booked for TV every week. They started pushing me. And my life went from, going to the grocery store with my wife, my ex-wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, and having to decide between dish soap and a bag of potatoes, and like, to traveling the world, being interviewed, doing all this crazy stuff, just like that.
And how did you adapt to that? Because, like you say, it's a massive change to lifestyle. So how did you ever deal with it? And if so, how did you go ahead and cope with that?
I always loved training. I loved it. I love that life of being on the road and having to figure it out. And so it wasn't much of an adaptation for me. This is what I'm doing. This is my job. This is what I want to do. I had, I don't pray, but like I wished for years, God, this is all I want to do. I want to do this for a job. And I would go to Raws and SmackDowns, and I would hear some of the guys sitting in the audience complaining, grumbling, like talent, because they weren't being used the way that they wanted to, or whatever. And I just remember, like, the fact that you work here is just, I would be happy. And I couldn't wrap my head around why they weren't happier. You're not happy that you're not on TV every week, but like, you're still there. And then years later, I finally understood, how you can, at some point, it just becomes like any other job. And you have the same gripes and grievances with management and the life as you would in any other profession.
So obviously you made your debut, you go on an unbeaten run. And on November 11th, 2005 episode of SmackDown, you get to face the late great Eddie Guerrero in, unfortunately, what would be his last televised match before his sad passing. Was this the first time you both wrestled, and what was that experience like to wrestle with, and how was he in and out of the ring during your time together?
We had worked a few times before that in tags. So there was a time where they put Randy Orton and I together briefly, and we would tag against Eddie and Ray Ray. And then I remember there was a match. It was me, Randy, Cowboy Bob Orton, Randy's dad, and Piper and Eddie and Ray. We did that. Some other, I tagged with JBL a few times against I think it was Ray and Eddie, but I had some experience with him.
Yeah.
From day one when I got there, he would, because he watches everything. He would watch all the matches, not just his. And then he come here for a second, and I go over, and he would just give me some pointers. And actually, I was riding with him and Chris Benoit at the time, because when I first got there, I think I was in the car with like Davari and some other guys that I had been at OVW with. And Batista pulled me and he goes, "Hey man, he goes, get in the car with like a veteran that can like show you." Nothing against those guys; they're great guys, but you need to get in the car with a vet. And so I took that advice and I went over and I asked Chris Benoit if I could ride with them. And after some debate with Eddie or some talks, he came back and said, "Yeah, you can ride with us. However, you're going to be doing all the driving." So, which I was happy to do. And sometimes those drives are like 3.5, 4 hours long in between, right? And you were doing house shows and then TVs. So no, but Eddie was just awesome. And remember we'd be riding and Eddie would go, oh, he would be in the back seat. It would be me and Chris. Chris would always ride shotgun. And all of a sudden, oh God, dude, he just blast the whole car out. Like, "I'm sorry, guys," and roll all the windows down. Sorry, guys. But even that last night, I remember we had the match. And I came to the back. I hit him. He told me to hit him with that chair. He was like, "Bring it." I will. Because I'd always been told, swing a chair, you got to swing it or it looks bad. So I swung it, and then I came back and he was like, maybe just a little less. And then we talked about the match. He had some pointers, and then we went out. We got a steak at a steakhouse, and they were picking on me. They were saying because the next week we were leaving right after Minneapolis. We were going to leave and go to the airport and go on it was going to be my first overseas tour. And they were like, "We're going to fuck with you on the plane. Don't fall asleep. Somebody will shave your eyebrow." Like all this.
Like the plane ride from hell.
All the ribs that they were talking about. And yeah, and then the next week, I remember getting dropped off at the arena, and somebody came up to me and told me about Eddie. It was just like that. What a crazy, crazy, dark, terrible feeling that was that day.
Yeah. No, I remember it as a fan. Yeah, it was surreal for all the wrong reasons, I think. Yeah. But, yeah.
But people ask me all the time how I feel about that. And I really don't have words, but the fact that I had his last match means a lot to me. It's I hate that it was his last match. Like, I wish he was still here, but I don't know. It's an unfortunate thing.
Yeah. No, yeah, it was. And I mean, obviously, I remember the match, watching as a fan. It was a hell of a match. It was a brilliant match between you both, and it's sad, obviously, unfortunate that it couldn't have maybe led to something down the line, like a program together and a bit of a feud.
Yeah.
But yeah, no.
I screwed up our finish a little bit, or I almost screwed it up. If you watch that match back, when he throws the chair to me, we did the famous Eddie Guerrero chair spot where he throws the chair to me, and the ref turns around, sees me with the chair, and when I did it, I threw the chair and it almost slid underneath the ropes and out.
Oh, yeah.
And I knew that I gotta hit him with the chair coming up here soon. So if you see, I'll go over and I like kick the chair, which doesn't make any sense at all. Um, it drives me crazy whenever somebody sends it to me. But I go over and I like kick it back into the ring a little bit, which doesn't make any sense. But yeah, almost screwed that up.
No, I mean, until you mention it, you don't really notice it. You're just enthralled in the match and knowing what's coming. Obviously, is usual trick that he would do that would get him the win by DQ, which was genius.
Yeah. It was so cool, so cool.
Yeah, and funny, very very.
So many variations of that he would do.
Yeah.
He's so creative. Remember one time, you got to hang when you're in a tag match. You have to hang on to the tag ropes.
Yeah.
These ropes that are 18 inches long. You got to hang on to. And remember one time he kept running down the ring apron, and the ref would you got to grab the rope. You got to grab the rope. So he like untied it, and then he tied a loop around the rope so that it would slide up and down. So then he went. You remember that?
Yeah. One of my favorite ones was WrestleMania 20 with Kurt Angle when he unties his boot. And he's going in the ankle up, the boot comes off, and he's like, well, and then he rolls him up. And Kurt Angle's there with his shoe, like, how this? Because he's done it up, undone it when no one's looking. And it was just little things like that. They were just comedic. You just wondered how he was going to do it. Next one, what his next trick would be. But no, yeah, gone too soon. And absolute, from growing up watching WCW and WWE, he was a true great. Was one of my favorites growing up.
He had another spot. He had another spot that he would use on house shows. I don't know if he ever used it on TV or not, but he would lose. He'd blow a gasket at some point, jump out of the ring, lift up the ring skirt. He'd start pulling chairs out, pull stuff, throw it in the ring. He'd take like a big toolbox, throw that into the ring, another chair, throw that in the ring. And then the ref would go and say, come on, and start cleaning house and put it. And then as the ref was cleaning house, he would grab like a wrench that had fallen out of the toolbox and just slide it into his boot and do it in a way that we all saw it, but the ref didn't see it, right? And then and he'd use it later on in the match. So
no, I never knew he did that, and that's creative as well. That's genius as well. Yeah, bless him. So obviously you mentioned the tour, your first tour. You suffer an injury. Is it your last dorsal tear on tour?
Yeah.
Sidelined for 6 months. As a wrestler, what are the emotions and thoughts going through your mind when you're sidelined, especially yourself? You're starting this big push, but any time in your career, what's going through your mind with that?
So I'm so sorry. Hang on a second.
No, it's okay.
Just a bummer. Like absolutely bummed out. I'm getting a big push. This is what I've waited for. Now they tell me like, hey, you're out for 8 months. And I was like, okay, all right, I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna be bigger, I'm gonna be stronger. And that time was probably the first time where I started to feel like a dip in my motivation. I don't know. It just sometimes when guys go away, it motivates them. They come back. You remember when Hunter came back from that quad tear?
Yeah.
Where he came back and was just jacked, right? And just stood there. The people didn't say any, or he didn't have to say or do anything for like 2 minutes straight. He just stood there. And like in my case, it went the other way. And that was, I got a staph infection during that time where I ended up in the hospital for 6 days. They were trying all these different antibiotics and none of them worked. And I remember the doctor said, like, we got one more to try. And I lost probably 70 pounds during that time. I just had a hard time bouncing back from that. But yeah, it was a bummer. But then when I came back, again, it was sort of like a reset button. They didn't really, and in hindsight, I didn't give them a reason to like have anything planned. Like I said, if I had gone out and been just busting my ass during that time and got jacked again, um, it would be different. But they didn't really know what to do with me when I came back. But things started progressing and got better. Then I finally, started picking up some steam. And I believe that was when I started working with Batista and Taker.
Yeah.
I worked with Taker, Kane, and Batista combination there for the better part of a year. It was just at least 8 or 9 months. We just went back and forth there. So, yeah.
Yeah. And before I get to Batista and taking your runs with them, I believe you returned to the ring after that on an OVW taping against now CM Punk.
Huh.
How what was your relationship like? Obviously, he's the talk of the town right now with his return to WWE and stuff. What was he like back then, and how was your relationship with him at the time? Or did you have many interactions with him at all?
So I didn't like Punk when we were on the Indies together. We had a run in at some point, and so I just didn't like him. And I remember he was a Paul Heyman guy. Paul Heyman, we were both tight with Paul, and I told Paul, like, I don't like him, and he was like, Paul said, I'm taking you both out for sushi, and we went out and had sushi and talked, and I got to know him, and I realized, like, oh, he's actually a really good guy. He's just sort of misunderstood, he's so from that point forward, I loved him. Like, we were good friends. We had a great relationship, and we even rode together a little bit when we were both on SmackDown.
Yeah,
I think it was on ECW at the time, but ECW and SmackDown were taping together.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But I remember that I had a match with him.
I was doing some research. Yeah, he was your opponent on your OVW taping. One of the fans reading this might say wrong, but yeah, I was doing a bit of research and saw that. Yeah, it was. I believe. Yeah, coming back in the ring, OVW TV taping. He was a world champ at the time, so yeah, I found that pretty awesome.
Yep. I've been in the business for 25 years. I forget. Until you told me that, I thought that we had never worked, honestly.
Yeah.
I've just forgotten so many things. And that happens to me a lot, where somebody will say, one of my students will say, hey, I just saw your match with so-and-so. I'll be like, what? Because when you're in that life, you're just, it's like, it's almost like we train our kids to take tests. Right? Cram all that information into your brain, take the test, and then dump it. Nobody actually retains that information.
No.
We teach people to learn to just test. I sort of feel like that's the way it is with wrestling, because you show up, you don't know what you're going to do. They hand you something, you've got a couple hours to come up with that. You put it together, you do it, and then on to the next town. So for me, it's just like a complete revolving door. So I don't remember a lot of the stuff. I have a pretty terrible short-term memory.
No, I'm the same. Obviously not with wrestling, obviously, but yeah, no, I'm the same. And like you say, the lifestyle you live, and the amount of matches you have. I'm amazed at wrestlers that you hear that can recount where they were, what date they wrestled, who they wrestled, what type of match they wrestled, and you think,
Matt Hardy.
Yeah, you have like over 10,000 matches. Like, how can you recall all that?
Matt Hardy's like that. He's like an elephant. He remembers everything, every detail. Wow. I could say, and sometimes, like, we've had some matches, and I messaged him like a year ago. I was like, hey, do you remember when we did this? What day was that? And he was like, oh, it was April 17th. And we were in Poughkeepsie, or, you know what I mean? Like, he'll know the state, he'll know exactly what we did. Nuts. I wish I had memory.
Yeah, I do. I forget the simplest thing, and my fiance kicks off, and she told me 5 minutes ago. So let alone a match from 5 years ago or something like that. So like you say, you return and you do a program with Batista, the Great American Bash Open Challenge.
Yep.
Was this a precursor to maybe seeing how you settled into the main event picture and giving you that next step push?
It was.
Yeah.
I think it was. It was supposed to be Batista versus Mark Henry.
Yeah.
Mark Henry, I believe, snapped his kneecap in half on Saturday night's main event. He went to give Ray a squisher in the corner and planted and just snapped it, right? So we've only got 3 weeks to build up to this. I remember Vince came up to me, he was like, "Are you ready?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "All right, you're working Batista at the Great American Bash." And going into it, I sort of thought, like, I'm here, and Batista's here at this point. He's the guy. So I just kind of thought, like, I wonder if they're gonna squash me. All right, well, whatever. If that happens, I'm just gonna do the best that I possibly can. And on the day, Arn was our producer, and I said, "What's it gonna be?" And he goes, "Oh, it's gonna be a competitive match, like 50-50." And then at the end, they want you to go over because Batista loses his shit and won't relinquish the 5 count. You're going to get counted out, or I don't know if we knew that at the time, but it was going to be something like that where he gets disqualified, which causes me to pick up the win. And I remember asking, "Do you think I could get color? Do you think I could, get some blood?"
Yeah.
Because the thing was, Batista was coming back from injury and he was supposed to be just angry and mad, and it would make sense, right? And especially then he gets disqualified. He's just lost his mind. And they were like, "No, you can't, because Taker is going to get color." He was working the Great Khali in a Punjabi prison match, I believe.
Yeah. And then Big Show swapped in last minute, wasn't it?
Khali ended up these elevated liver enzymes or something like that.
Yeah, it was something, like that. Quite, yeah.
I think that happened to Bobby Lashley and maybe one other person too at the time. They didn't know what it was. It was just, "We don't think you should wrestle." So during the match, at one point, so they told me, "No, you can't get color." All right, well, cool. So at some point, we roll out of the ring and Batista smashes my head into the steps. And normally put your hand up or you stop a little bit short. And for whatever reason, I just smacked my head on the end of that, on the edge of the steps. And I still have a scar like right here.
Yeah.
And like,
yeah, see it, yeah.
Right there. And I started bleeding. And again, this is what I wanted to do in the first place. So I'm kind of happy about it. It doesn't bother me. Just a couple stitches or whatever, right? And so I feel like that added to the realism of the match. It's kind of gross for some people, but I remember at one point I mounted him, like I got on top of him and I was punching him. And as I'm punching him, I can see it in slow motion, a drop of blood, like a big drop of blood, fell out of my head and right into his open eyeball. Like, ah! And so I got pretty good color for the match. And then at the end, when he loses his shit, he doesn't break the 5 count in the corner, gets DQ'd, and then he really tears it up. And he posts me. He runs me into the post. And then he's supposed to run me, I think, 2 or 3 times. And then he's supposed to give me 3 spine busters and then a Batista bomb at the end of it all. And on that first post, I was already going and he gave me a little extra. And for whatever reason, I could not move. I just hit that post as hard as I could. And that scar right there.
Oh, yeah. Damn.
Got zipped open. If you watch, it's just pouring out of my head. And
I thought that was legit bleeding. I thought, Jesus, that's a big cut.
It's funny because like afterwards, I I remember I was rolling with Matt Hardy at the time, and we would always look at the dirt sheets afterwards. And there were, I don't remember who it was, but somebody was like, leave it to WWE to have this gratuitous blood on their, you know, basically saying that we had planned that out to occur, that it was a bad look for WWE, but it was like, it was legit. It was an accident. So, yeah. And then he hits me with, and I slipped off him on the Batista bomb. Batista bomb looks like shit. That kills me to this day. But went back through the curtain, and Vince stood up and he was like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm good. I'm good." And I don't know, just you gotta understand uh it was almost like Vince was like, "Yes, good man." Like I no sold it. And I just thanked Batista. It was no big deal. Like, in the end of the day, I'm fine. I didn't realize how concussed I was. I didn't realize that for several years until like maybe 10 years ago, we started knowing about concussions.
Yeah.
But I just went backstage. Doc sewed me up. I think he put like 9 stitches in there, put some stitches in here. That's it. Sent me to my hotel room, and I worked the next night on a house show, I believe. But that was the second best thing that ever happened to me in my career. The question was that setting you up for I think it was like a test to see, it was just to test the waters a little bit.
Yeah.
But a few days later, Undertaker came up and he was like, "Hey man, I saw what you did with Batista." He said, I'm gonna ask the boss if we can do a program together." Awesome. But great compliment. And then about a week later, Taker came up to me again, said, "Did you hear what we're doing?" I said, "No." He said, "We're going to go into a program. We're going to have about 3 pay-per-views out of it. So we'll see how we go." And then I think we ended up going for longer. It was originally just supposed to be a 3-month run, and it ended up taking a lot longer.
Yeah. And that rolls nicely in. So what did it feel like for you to have that program with the Undertaker, and what was he like in and out of the ring with you?
Just that guy was like a dad to me. He took me under his wing, and he really, really cared. Just so giving, so cool. There was a couple times where I got in trouble a little bit backstage, and he would always look out for me, and nothing major, but like he'd pull me like, "Hey man, watch it." He was just fantastic, and everything would be on the fly.
Yeah.
So the first night we touched, we were in, I believe, Oklahoma City, and it was just a dark match. He came up to me and he was like, "Hey man, we're not going to call anything tonight. We're just going to go out there, listen to me. We'll listen to the crowd. Do your stuff. Do it well. I'll do my stuff. I'll literally tell you every step, paint by numbers. Just listen to me." Okay, awesome. And I didn't have any butterflies going into it because I knew that I'm in there with a guy, a legend who he wouldn't put us in this situation if he wasn't confident that he could handle it. So I just had to do my stuff to the best of my ability. And that was it. He punched me, boom, kick me, kick, do this, do that. Awesome. And then came back and he was like, "I liked it." And then the next night, okay, what's something you want to do? And I think I put in the boot wash in the corner. And then the next night, it was one more thing. And then we started feeling each other out. But we worked for probably 3 weeks before we really started getting to a place where he was comfortable to have me having input.
Yeah.
But just what an awesome guy. Really cool. I'm happy that people are now able to see what he's really like, because he's doing all these interviews and he's got a podcast. And man, like, one of my favorite human beings on the planet.
No, that's also he's well still is my favorite growing up. He was the guy for me because obviously his career spanned over over 3 decades, and I've seen him since I was a tiny little dude. But yeah, no, and I remembered your feud with him was one of my favorites. And I was very lucky. I didn't really get to see many wrestling shows live, but I got to see a SmackDown over here in the UK. And I think it was you and MVP were attacking Kane, and he came out, and it's the one where he's just pulling up his thingies to come out and save Kane. And they give you both. You push MVP into the ring and walk off, and they double choke slam him. And it was just a cool rivalry. Just you MVP, him and Kane was. It was a unique one. It was pretty awesome at the time.
Yeah. I love tagging with MVP because it was that reluctant sort of tag team.
Yeah.
We don't like each other, but we're forced into this position.
Yeah.
So there's some cool stuff we got to do.
Yeah. No, it was awesome. Yeah, it was an awesome feud. So yeah, rolling on from obviously Taker, but before that, in between that, Batista, you win the United States title.
Yep.
Logan Paul now is the current one, and on his podcast, he was saying what an honor it is. How are your feelings? Do they obviously echo that? Being a huge fan as well and winning the title. What were your thoughts of getting handed the strap? That's just below the next step.
Yeah, I knew it was. I'm doing something right. I felt like I was doing something right, and it was just I'm gonna enjoy this while it lasts, and I'm gonna again do the best I possibly can. And it was I only had it for about a month. It was a really short reign, and the reason I took it off of Bobby Lashley, I believe it was Bobby and
triple threat with Lashley and Finley.
Right. And so I don't know what the long-term plans were for that, but then a week or two later was when Taker approached me and said he wanted to do a program. And so I think they midstream they sort of decided, okay, we're going to go this route instead. So I remember I dropped the title to Chris Benoit, and it was in Vince's eyes, you don't need this title because you're going with Taker, and that title is beneath him. Nothing against the United States Championship, but Taker is well above that. So that would be a step back. You don't need it. And so that's why they had me drop it to Chris. And then that, as much as I loved working with Taker, that began very tumultuous time in my career where all of the stuff that had brought me to the dance, my loud, obnoxious, over the top character, Vince was like, knock it off. Stop that. You're too much. You're too over the top. You're too Jim Carrey. You're too this. And I was just like, I couldn't figure out what the fuck he was talking about. And, but in hindsight, I know what he was talking about. It was too much. I cringe when I go back and I watch that stuff. So I'm so over the top. He wanted it to be more believable. The stuff that I was doing, it was almost cartoonish. Where he wanted me to be serious, be a dick, be a heel, be a villain, don't try to get laughs. You're too funny. And it took me forever. Probably until I left the company to really figure out what the hell he was talking about. And by then it was too late.
So like I say, you lose to Chris Benoit, the United States title. But at WrestleMania 23, you get given what was a huge, I remember when it was something, and it still kind of is now. You win the Money in the Bank ladder match, which guarantees you a world title shot. How did that come about? And was there a plan for you to actually cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase? Because then I remembered you losing it to Edge a month later.
Yeah.
It didn't really make sense to, obviously I maybe wasn't paying attention to something as a fan, but it didn't really make sense because I thought the character was awesome, as ready for it as such.
Yeah. So the build up to WrestleMania, the week before, WWE goes into, I believe where were we? We were in Detroit, right?
Yeah.
So WWE goes into Detroit for a week and takes over and does all these appearances, and there's all these events going on and stuff leading up to WrestleMania. So, and then each day there's a time allotted at say two to three or 2 to 4 where all the people that are involved in that match can go into a room and you start hashing it out and start talking. All right, what are we going to do? I remember they had a ring there. They had a bunch of ladders, different sizes. They had crash pads and stuff for us to try. So we just kind of started putting it together. And for the first 3 or 4 days, first 3 days that we were putting it together, Edge was going over. He had won the first one.
Yeah.
I think it was the second one, maybe, or the first one took place at WrestleMania 21, right?
Yeah, so he won that one. Yeah, yeah.
And then
That's when he
did he win
cashed
it?
it in against Cena and got his rivalry going with him.
And then did he win it the next year as well?
Not sure. 22.
Or was it RVD that won it next?
I think he won it next year. I think he won it after Mr.
This was
Money.
like
Yeah, 'cause then he was Mr. Money in the Bank, and yeah,
So this was like the third Money in the Bank ladder match,
yeah.
and it was going to be Edge again,
Mhm.
and that's what we were working towards. And then one of the days we went in, they were like, "We're going to put it on Kennedy," and I remember at the time inside fireworks are going off, right? Because this is a big opportunity.
Yeah.
And I knew what that could lead to. It wasn't so much like winning the match or whatever. It was just like I know what this can lead to.
Yeah.
But I didn't get excited, and I remember thinking like it could change. It could change. It could change like 10 minutes before we go out there. They could change it, and oftentimes it does. But so yeah, we put that together, and then they had me cut a promo the next night and say, I'm going to cash this in 1 year from now at WrestleMania. And that was the plan moving forward. I was going to literally cash in the briefcase next year's WrestleMania. And then Taker tore his biceps and had to have surgery. So I remember one day Vince called me into the office. It was well after the show had ended. Everybody was out of the building. It was just Vince and Stephanie in the office. And he said, "Hey, here's the deal. Taker needs surgery. We got to get the title off of him. So tomorrow, or actually, this was a Tuesday night after SmackDown taping. So next Tuesday, you're going to come out." He ran through the whole scenario of what they were going to do, right? They were going to have a cage match. Taker barely squeaks out a victory. Then somebody comes out and beats him up a little bit more. Then here I come, cash in the briefcase, basically pick the bones.
Yeah.
And he goes, "We'll have a new champion." And then he said, "Look, Batista is our guy right now. And we feel like his stock rises when he's on the chase. It's always better when you're chased as a babyface, chasing that title. Then when you get it, it's kind of a, oh, now what?"
Yeah.
Right. And so that was the plan moving forward. Again, I was excited, and I went home, had a couple days off, and then the next time I wrestled was on a house show in Poughkeepsie, and it was in a weird like 8-man scramble too or something, and I just took a bad bump and I felt something pop in my tricep, and I rolled out to the floor, but Finley was on the floor, and I remember he looked at it right away and he goes, "That doesn't look good." And it started swelling up. By the time I got downstairs, I couldn't move. I literally couldn't move. My elbow was like immobilized, and it was already starting to turn colors. And I knew something was up. That night, I go to Erie, Pennsylvania. I remember Hornswoggle drove me. We went to the emergency room. I got an X-ray and MRI. And then I waited around in my hotel room the next day. Stephanie called me. She said, "Ken, you tore your triceps off the bone. You're going to need 8 months. You're going to have surgery. It's going to be 8 or 9 months. Here's the thing. We still need to get that title off of Taker." So we're going to send Vince's jet is going to come pick you up. You're going to fly to Penn State, and then you're going to drop the briefcase to Edge. Edge is going to do what you were supposed to do. I'm sorry, and I was just like, business is business, like, yeah, I need this thing. I can't do it. I do remember thinking, well, I have a year to cash it in. Isn't there another way that you could get the title off Taker? But I didn't pipe up. I should have. So I went, and I remember I could not move my arm. So it's completely bandaged up. And Vince said, what can you do? And I'm, not much. So if you watch that match, it was just Edge jumps me on the ramp. He beats the shit out of me, rolls me in the ring, spear, 1, 2, 3. And then he takes the briefcase. The next day, I flew to Birmingham, Alabama to go have surgery with Dr. James Andrews. I'm sitting on his table, and he's feeling my arm, and he said, that's not a tear. And what? That's not a tear. I don't think that's a tear. Because I can't find your MRI anywhere, but I don't think that's a tear. I don't feel it in there. And I hate getting MRIs, but I had to do another one because they literally couldn't find it. And sure enough, a little while later, he comes, and I don't know if he called me or if I had to go back in. He goes, it's not torn, it's just a large hematoma, which is just basically a bunch of blood vessels that popped. Yeah. And so he's like, you'll be out for maybe a month and a half, then you'll be back to work. So yeah, it was what a crazy MVP reminds me, and he's not being a dick when he does it, but he always reminds me, he's like, you were a misdiagnosis away from being the world champion. So that was interesting, frustrating, but
yeah. And did they ever find out back in obviously WWE that was what were their thoughts on it? Did they ever find out? Did they care that it was a misdiagnosis for you or anything like that?
Oh, I'm not sure. I really don't know. At that level, it's not you can't take anything personally.
Yeah.
It's just business. They got to keep the machine cooking. We're just cogs, You take one cog out, put another one in its place. It keeps rolling. It's just the way that it goes. It's really like that. It's not even just the wrestling business that's like that. It's everywhere. Every business has to operate in that capacity. So
yeah, that is unfortunate because that had been a good run. I think he was world champ. Would have been pretty entertaining. Would have been good.
It is what it is, and I'm not sad about it. I don't sit and dwell on it. It's just, it is what it is. It's an interesting story now.
Yeah. So, 2000, after this hiatus, you come back. 2007, you draft to Raw. You get to wrestle the likes of John Cena. What was it like working with him, who was the face of the company at the time, and until a few years ago, recently was?
I had a bad attitude at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just wasn't putting my effort into everything, and I didn't really like John. We didn't get along very well, and I always thought it was him. And looking back, it was me. It was when I was on SmackDown, when I first got there, I was so humble and listened to everybody and asked for criticism and feedback from the right people. And then by the time I got over to Raw, I don't know if I just felt like I know me, I know my shit. Like, so John would try to give me advice from time to time, and I just brush it off. And look at it as condescension rather than help, which I think it was. I think it was honest, like, hey man, I'm trying, when are you gonna step up? And I just always took it the wrong way. So and we had some interesting run-ins and stuff, and didn't really get along, like I said, and that led to eventually I got fired. And when I look back on it, I would have fired me too.
Yeah.
So for years, I had the biggest chip on my shoulder. I was so mad at John and Randy and Vince uh, and there's rumors that those guys had a hand in my leaving WWE, and if that is in fact the case, I should have never been in a situation where they would have that kind of control over me anyways. Had I been doing the right things, even if they would have said those things to the boss would have went like, shut the fuck up. Like, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because that rolls nicely into my next question was, yeah, how, obviously, because you were due to return, they did a video package on you, and then 4 days later, you released from the company. So, yeah, I just wonder what you
Yeah.
mentioned.
I remember I had the match with, it was 5-on-5. It was the tag match. It was like, we were all wearing, was it like, we were wearing Lakers jerseys, I believe.
Yeah. It was
And the
Boston,
baby,
it was the Celtics and the
yeah,
Lakers or something like that, wasn't it?
it was Utah Jazz.
That was it, Jazz. Yeah, because that was, yeah.
Because the thing was, the whole reason for that, do you know the reason for that?
No?
Because we were originally supposed to be in, Utah, but they unbooked WWE for a basketball game or something. Like there was like we had already had the building secured, and then there was a playoff game, and so they basically bumped us out and put that playoff game there. And so Vince was pissed. We secured LA Staples Center so that the Lakers were the baby faces. Vince was pissed at Utah for kicking us out of there, basically. That's why we all wore heels, wore Utah Jazz, and the I think that was I might have that conflated, I might have that flipped around, but I think that was the deal. But yeah, and then I had that match, and then a couple days later, I get that call, and a couple of years earlier, no, not like maybe a year earlier, Steve Austin sat me down and he said, "Kid, get the fuck out of there." He goes, you just you need to leave, go to TNA, go to Japan, do your stuff there, get over, then you can come back. But right now, it's not the place for you." And I just remember I wanted to take his advice, but I just couldn't pull that trigger. I couldn't pull the trigger and take that kind of a risk of, that's a hell of a payday. You could make some damn good money in WWE. And yeah, so I wish I would have taken his advice to some degree.
Yeah.
But that decision was made for me. And then it was like, and like I said, I had a bad attitude about it for years and I blamed it on everybody else. I should have been blaming myself for it. So,
well, yeah, never knew that. Yeah, Stone Cold sat you down. Wow.
Yeah. Yep.
So, obviously, then you go over to TNA after, I believe, a year stint in the independent scene. How did that come about, and how did you find your time in TNA?
I don't remember who it was that reached out to me first, but I think Booker T reached out and said, "Hey man, like come over here. The water is fine. The air is fine here. Um, I really like it here. They give you an opportunity. You can do whatever you want, pretty much within reason. Obviously, they give you a little freedom." So I ended up working out a deal with them. I went over to TNA and I had a really small contract, not a whole lot of guaranteed money, but I figured I'm going to go there. I'm going to prove myself. And I did. And then I got I signed a 3-year deal there with considerably more money and more benefits and stuff. I had a great time there. But again, I was still in my head. I still had a bad attitude about the other place.
Mm.
So I don't know that I gave it 100% like I should have. But I really loved that locker room. I loved the boys. Like I had a lot of freedom to kind of do what I actually, people don't know this, but Paul Heyman was sort of kind of writing for Impact
Okay.
because I would get my script,
Mm.
have these bullet points, and there'd be some stuff in there that I just like, I don't think that's good. But I would call Paul and I would say, hey, here's what they've given me. Do you have any suggestions? And then he would say, I'll just wait 10 minutes. I'll have an email in your inbox. And then he'd have like a thing written out, a new script that would sort of still get us to the same place
Mm.
that was in the original script, but it was more like what I would say.
Mm.
And we kind of bounced back and forth. But yeah, that happened for several months. So I have Paul to thank for a lot in my career and some of those early promos at TNA. And just the fact that they gave me that freedom to say, you know, hey, here was the directive was, here's where we have to get to. Here's the basic script and some bullet points. Do it the way that you see fit. You know, get us here, but you can get there however you want to.
Yeah. Wow. And in that time, you become a two-time world champion. First time against Jeff Hardy, but the second time you beat another legend in Sting,
Yeah.
who is recently going to be hanging up his boots in the squared circle. How was that experience, and what was it like sharing a locker room, being around? Well, you've been around two of the biggest icons in the Undertaker and Sting. How was it with Sting in TNA?
He was on day one. He just said, I don't know you well, but I just want you to know that I am open to doing pretty much anything. So if you have ideas, please throw them out there. So again, that was just like super cool. He didn't have to do that, but
Mm.
and then I had an idea to do the I dressed up like Surfer Sting.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
I had the bleach blonde hair at the time, and I remember like when I first broke into the business, I would have people say, "Hey, you kind of remind me of a young Sting," and so I pitched that to him, and he loved it, and so we did that. And he ended up, if you watch those episodes of Impact or TNA, I'm wearing Sting's old gear, so he would bring it to me, and then Sting would actually paint my face because you know what better way to get the accuracy than to have the man himself do it. So in those moments, the fan in me is sitting there like, I can't believe that this is happening.
Mm.
You know. But yeah, we had a good little feud. I loved working with Sting. And then he did that Joker Sting gimmick.
Yeah, which was very creative.
Fantastic.
Yeah,
No,
nice one.
super giving
Yeah,
though. Super awesome.
yeah, yeah. It is going to be a shame when he hangs up. That's, well, like I say, him and Taker now gone. That's the two great icons of an era, really, which is sad to say, but yeah.
Hey, are we live here?
No, just recording.
Would you be okay if I just took 1 minute to go grab something?
Yeah, of course, because I do feel bad. I have overran massively, so apologies on this.
It's okay. I just gotta hit the
Yeah,
little
of course.
combo real quick. Okay, I'm back. Thank you.
No, it's okay. I won't try and keep it too long. I'll try and get through this question because I know you're a busy man and I don't want to take the mickey as such.
No, you're good.
So 2016, you part TNA. What led to this and how did that come about for you?
I guess it was just time.
Yeah.
Yeah, we had new management come in. In the time that I was there, we had several changings of the guard where at first I believe it was Terry Taylor when I first got there, and then it was Bruce Pritchard, and then it was Eric Bischoff, or I don't have those in the correct order, but it was just like, and when John Gaboric came there, we just didn't see eye to eye, and yeah, it was just time for me to go. So, and then I went over to, I had parted ways with the company quietly. Nothing was announced. And then I came over to Scotland and I did ICW. And in that time, I, when I got there, they were like, you can say whatever you want here. Don't worry, you can swear. So I was pretty early. I was like first or second on the card. And I was like, I was healing. I was a heel at the time. And somebody told me they hate TNA here. They fucking hate TNA. So get on them about that. So I went out there and I was like, hey, I hear you guys like TNA. Fuck TNA. Fuck TNA. Fuck TNA. I'm like, well, yeah, I don't work for them. I don't work for them anymore. So yeah, fuck TNA. And then they popped for it. And then I was like, well, fuck you too. And then they booed. And it was just part of my, it's just part of me being a heel. And it was somebody snipped that little piece out of me saying fuck TNA and took it out of context and made it seem like I went over and I got on a soapbox and I said that to the world, but that wasn't the case. So we had a little bit of a falling out after that, but it's all good now.
Good. And since then, obviously, you had some time on the independent scene, but now have ventured into opening your own wrestling school. So tell us about the Academy School of Professional Wrestling in Twin Cities. Tell us more about it and how did that come about for you?
It was something that I always wanted to do. For that 5.5, 6 years that I spent on the indies before I got signed with WWE, it was trial and error. It was just picking up little tidbits of information from this person and refining and making mistakes and then correcting those mistakes. And I just always wanted to be able to make that easier for people so that they didn't have to make all those same mistakes that I did. And so that was the idea. And Davari and my wife pushed me to, hey, you should open this wrestling school. So we did in 2016, and here we are, and we've trained hundreds of people. We've got, I'm so proud of all the local talent that we have churned out, but we also have some people in AEW. We've got Darius and Dante Martin, our graduates. Julia Hart is one of our students. Over in WWE, Von Wagner, Gable Stevenson. Gable trained with us for about 8 months or a year. There's Tiffany Stratton. She's one of our students.
Yeah, she's got a bright future out of her. Yeah.
Javier Bernal. There was another guy who actually came to us. He was one of the NIL guys, so he was a college athlete, and he got a tryout. And so he came to me and said, like, hey, I don't know anything about wrestling. Can you show me some stuff? We showed him just some basics, kind of told him about the political landscape, taught him some of that. And then he was able to go and he got signed. He was at NXT. He's since been released. And now I believe he went out to California and he's training with Rikishi out there. So hopefully, one day you'll see more of him. But there's also, I've got 20 of my students that could potentially, if they worked hard enough, they could possibly see the bright light someday.
Yeah. And do the students vary from young upcomers to people who, well, say around my age, who've thought, yeah, like you say, you've waited 31 years, why not give it a shot?
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. We've got, I think our youngest student is 17,
Mm-hmm.
and our oldest student is 45 or something like that. And success, we all define success differently. And I sort of, my philosophy is whatever that is for you, I want to help you find that. So whether that is just learning the basics and having a match or two, or just you know, networking, finding a friend group, um, or if it's WWE or bust like I was, we can help you get there, you know. So yeah, we train all walks of life, uh, men, women. You got to be 15 or older because I feel like younger, the concussions and stuff. We're actually working on putting together a program for youth.
Yeah.
So that would remove a lot of the bumping and dangerous aspects, the more dangerous aspects of the business.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I wish, obviously, it sounds like it's absolutely awesome. So I wish you all the best.
Thank you, man. Thank you. We've been doing live streams too every week.
Okay.
If you go, we have a TikTok.
Yeah.
Anderson Squared is the tag.
Okay.
Spelled out Anderson Squared. And at least every Tuesday and Thursday, we have match night at the academy at 8:15 Central.
Yeah.
We start streaming. I guess 8:15 Central is probably like 4 o'clock in the morning for you, or about 2 o'clock in the morning.
Around that, yeah, around that time, yeah. Yeah.
Where are you? Where are you actually?
So just out, well, Cambridge. So just just outside Cambridge. So really major city, probably near London. Yeah, it's
Gotcha.
my way, yeah. But yeah, so
Love Cambridge.
yeah.
They love Cambridge.
Yeah, no, Cambridge, yeah. It's not bad. Yeah, it's not bad. It's okay. Right, so some final just quick fire questions just from fan to legend like yourself. So what are your thoughts on the business today and the product?
I know it's changed, it's evolved, it's gonna keep evolving, and
Mm.
we have to either figure out a way to adapt.
Mm.
It's gonna keep rolling.
Mm.
Some of the changes I don't really, I wish there was more story and selling and making sure that everything means something. You're not just doing something to show off. You can still show off, but do it in a way that ties into the story.
Yeah.
Sense. Um, but it is what it is. And I focus heavily on storytelling.
Yeah.
Making sure that people aren't just doing it to do it. It's not
that's
get in the ring and do moves to each other. There's way more involved.
yeah, I think as a fan watching, that's what's missing quite a lot. It seems like it's just routines and who can do the most dangerous stunt and survive.
Yep.
Whereas I think we saw it what with if we go back to Taker and AJ Styles doing a simple movie thing. That match was, I know it was filmed in segments, but told a story, and that's
Yep.
the show, as opposed to people doing 860 flips or whatever you can do now.
Actually,
Yeah.
I feel like AEW did that too. They had a cinematic style match. It was like Darby Allin was in it, Sting was in it.
Yeah.
Right? There was like
Yeah.
7 guys involved. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, they
Yeah.
told a story.
Yeah.
No.
Or even like you say in the ring, I remember Dustin and Cody's match in AEW. What was it, a couple of years ago or something like that?
Mhm.
That was literally it, telling the story. Two brothers
Oh yeah,
each
yes.
other.
Yep.
One, Dustin was saying he's the favorite son, and Cody was the little brother trying to, just something like that, simple, clicked, and it was just perfection. It was brilliant. But I do think that misses as a fan, yeah, majorly.
I do still love the business. Like I really do.
Mm.
I don't watch the product as much as I probably should.
Mm.
However, I I still have my ear to the tracks, and anytime there's something really good that happens,
Mm.
I hear about it, and then I'll go and watch it.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things, speaking of like less is more is less. Um, Sami Zayn and Roman Reigns. I know this is like 6 months ago, but that
Yeah.
match where they didn't touch each other, I
Yeah.
believe the bell rings and they don't touch each other for 4.5 minutes.
Yeah.
Like you got them,
Yeah.
got them there. You don't need to. And then they go and it's super simple. It's a super simple match, and it's just they're telling us a story. So
No, that's a
love
hell of one as well. Yeah, that skipped my mind, but yeah, that was a brilliant one. Like I say, just the whole build up to it and culminate perfectly. Yeah, that's awesome.
it.
And just two quick fire ones for you. So, who are your top 5 opponents that you faced throughout your career? Who would you put on that list?
This is hard to do.
Mm,
Taker, Batista, Matt Hardy, Kurt Angle, um, I'd say maybe Jeff Hardy.
yeah,
So the Hardy Boys, Taker, Batista, and Kurt Angle. My favorite match that I've ever had was Kurt Angle in the
ladder
steel cage.
match.
It
Okay,
was a
yeah,
cage match at Lockdown in 2009.
yeah, that was a hell of a match. Yeah, what was he like to work with?
Just same, just awesome.
Yeah,
He's a cyborg though. Like, dude's not real. He doesn't have an off switch, so you have to really be cooking in there
yeah,
when you got to be in some shape to work with Kurt Angle because he just continuously goes. There's no off switch.
yeah. I can imagine being you win a gold medal with a broken neck. Says it all right there.
Broken freaking neck.
Yeah, broken freaking neck. Yeah. And lastly, so who's on your Mount Rushmore of wrestling? Top 4 guys.
Kurt, Sean, Taker, and Austin.
It's pretty damn good Mount Rushmore to me. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you, Mr. Anderson, for your time. I really appreciate it. I know it's gone over, so apologies, but it was an absolute honor and pleasure
Thank
to,
you,
to interview with you, and I hope you
and I
enjoyed it.
appreciate you being giving with me. I know we were supposed to go an hour earlier, and I thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed it, and hope we could do it again sometime in the future.
Do you mind if I tell people where they can get a hold of me? And
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I was gonna have you also WhatsApp me any links, and I can
okay.
put them in the piece. But by all means, the people
Yep.
know they can find you.
I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. On Twitter, it's Mr. Ken Anderson, Mr. Ken Anderson, and on Instagram, it's Mister, Mr. spelled out, Ken Anderson. I'm on Facebook as Ken Anderson. We've got an academy school of professional wrestling in Minnesota. And if somebody wants and they want to get in touch, even if you don't live in this area, I can talk to you and help you find a good school so that you're doing things the right way. And you can just text me at 507-722-2776. So, or one more thing, you can email us at theacademyprowrestling@gmail.com.
Fantastic. So you heard it from the
So,
man himself. Yeah, heard it from the man himself. So please get in touch to pick the brains of a true legend. In my opinion, awesome character, awesome wrestler, and an absolute nice guy from the interaction of how he is. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you.
Amazing. Right. If it's all right, I'll end the recording in the interview. So thank you very much, folks, and I'll just hang on with you a few minutes.
Yeah.
So we'll